If you're looking for the best Cajon Sears list you must see, we made this list based on our personal preference and sorted it based on their features, prices, quality, durability, and reputation of the manufacturers and customer feedback. Also, we've included options for every type of customer. So let's get started. At the first position of our list, we have Meinl Cajon Box Drum. Let's start with this Cajon from German percussion instrument maker Meinl. This brand has an astounding range of box drums, and you're going to see quite a few on our list. We can essentially use this box drum to define what a Cajon is and as a baseline to measure the other instruments against. As the name says, this is a string Cajon, so you're going to expect and find a really pronounced snappy snare sound. That's up at the top of this box, especially near the corners. Rim shots get you a slightly duller, tappy sound. The snare note here is loud and strong, so it might not be ideal for all music, especially softer, mellower styles. The soundboard or playing surface of the Cajon contributes both to the snare sound and to the bass. This box is made of siam, oak plywood, bringing a dense and, therefore, deep warm tone to the bass notes. Now let's talk quality. We can easily say that all of the Meinl Cajon we tried out are built well and clearly put together with care. The headliner has slightly curved shoulders for hand comfort and thick, durable rubber feet to protect the box and raise it up for even more boom. Moving on to the next at number 2 with Meinl Jumbo Bass Subwoofer Cajon. Next, we have a totally different instrument to look at. And trust us, the subwoofer ain't your grandma's Cajon. It's obvious that this is a modified instrument. Not only is it a monster at 3,211 cubic inches, but it also has 2 large sound ports coming out of the bottom of the front panel. Most Cajons have their sound ports at the back so that the soundboard is one large uninterrupted board. So this guy is weird. This subwoofer does exactly what its name claims it woofs. The bass note is deep, resonant, warm, and full like a hot coffee on a snowy day. Unlike any of the other box drums we tried, this one sounds like a real bass drum. You can even feel it in your ribcage. The medium-density fiberboard MDF construction combined with a really hard walnut soundboard creates that booming sound. That sound is amplified inside and driven out through the sound ports to blast your audience. MDF construction is essential to that bass sound, but be aware that it will be less durable in the long run, so extra care is needed. Never ever get this drum wet as the MDF could swell and start to disintegrate. The snare note is delivered by 2 sets of internal wire snares and has a nice moderate sizzle. The attack is definitely different from a string Cajon sound. This drum is less aggressive and very bass-focused. The number 3 position is held by Meinl Cajon Box Drum. Here's another Meinl instrument that's really comparable to the headliner series. So, let's take a look at how they're similar and how they're different. The 2 instruments are essentially the same size, both being what we can call full-size Cajons. Both are nicely crafted, look great, and smack of quality. First, this box drum. This gives the snare noticeably less snap and more crackle. Though you can still find striking zones on the soundboard that will really make the snare pop, in general, it hangs back and blends in more than the headliner does. The Birch Cafe Cajon is made from, yes, you guessed it, Baltic birch wood. Birch is used a lot in drum shells for its durability and warm sound. Here, the bass does sound softer and warmer than on the headliner. There are 2 other important things to note. One is that the soundboard is stained wine red, which looks classy but is also useful. If you play a lot, a really pale soundboard will need frequent cleaning and will eventually show stains and discoloration. Not a worry here. This drum also comes with a padded Cajon carrying bag. Again, this is perfect if you're going to be gigging all over town. Next at number 4, we have Meinl Percussion Cajon Box Drum. Firstly, the construction is very similar. Both box drums are constructed from Baltic birch, giving the same sound quality to the snare and bass notes. The relative dimensions are also very similar, but at only 15 inches tall. The Jam series is a compact Cajon. This does make it lighter and easier to transport between gigs. The size is also reflected in the price, so you're basically getting the same quality of Cajon for a smaller size and price tag. As you might have expected, the bass is where the biggest sacrifice in sound lays. This smaller soundboard and less room for echo inside the box drum means the size of your bass boom is quite diminished, and you'll for sure need to use a mic at even small gigs. The tone sounds less warm, and you also get a lot of the snare sound bleeding into the bass note. The snare, on the other hand, sounds bright and perky. Two sets of internal snares provide that sizzle, and the small size actually brings more pop to this tone than on the larger boxes. So, in the end, it's a bit of a toss-up. The number 5 position is held by Roland EC-10 Cajon Electronic Layered Cajon. Roland, the world-renowned instrument maker, has been branching out into hybrid electronic percussion instruments for a while now. And considering the quality of their electronic drum kits, the Cajon is definitely worth a look. Let's start by saying that the hardwood and wrapped MDF construction is solid and produces a decent Cajon sound. However, it really is only decent. Obviously, there are also a lot of electronics inside, and that means the actual resonance chamber is much smaller than the other models we've looked at. This is not just an acoustic Cajon, it's also an electronic instrument and amplifier. You can run it off AC power or EA batteries. When you turn on the system, you can choose from one of 30 sound pairs. So suddenly, when you play the note on the face of the drum and then the edge, you can get 2 different percussion sounds. These include sounds like bongos, congas, djembe, and lots more. So while a normal Cajon can give about 3-4 really different tones, this instrument provides 60+. Remember, this is a hybrid, and the price of all that electronic wizardry is reflected in the more than hefty price tag. But this has got to be the most innovative and versatile Cajon on the market. The number 6 position is dominated by stained American White Ash Headliner Series Cajon's Meinl. Back in the Meinl instrument world, here's another version of their headliner to compare. With the same dimensions and same builder, you might not expect much difference in sound with the regular headliner. Actually, you'd be surprised. First of all, the construction is quite different. Even though both are string Cajons with 2 sets of internal guitar-like strings, the rest of the build is very different. This box is made of MDF with a non-slip wrap. The soundboard is stained white ash as opposed to Siam oak. The bass note is definitely boomier. Is that a word? It has more oomph, though certainly not nearly as much as the subwoofer has. There's also less bleed from the snare sound into the bass note on this drum. On the other hand, the snare tone has less attack than it does on the Siam oak headliner. Thinking about durability, this drum is wrapped MDF, so again be aware of the danger of water. Wood will take dings and dents, but in the long term will stand up better than MDF will do lots of gigging and bumps in the van. Moving on to the next at number 7 with Schlagwerk C404 BLK 2-in-1 Series Snare Cajon. Schlagwerk throws their hat into the German percussion makers competition with a name that actually means percussion or blow factory. Literally, this 2-in-1 Cajon drum looks well made and boldly designed. This is a large, bold instrument and features a cool industrial look, echoing the Cajon's great origins. As the tallest of the box drums, we can add that it's more comfortable for larger players to play without stooping too much. The sound is also high quality. The drum is made of birch, giving it a warm sound very much like a normal drum kit. The bass is rich, though not as loud as you'd find with the Meinl headliner. The snare tone on this box drum is controlled by a 40-wire snare system. This gives it a characteristic sizzle with less attack and a more blended sound. However, the 2-in-1 and the name refers to the possibility of easily removing the snares. This allows for a traditional sound where the loosely fixed soundboard being smacked into the box body is what creates the snare-like tone. In this respect, the 2-in-1 produces a greater range of sounds and therefore fits with a greater range of musical styles. One thing that we didn't like so much was the feet. Though they are rubber-coated, the feet are made of felt, much like the felts on cymbal stands. Since you're likely to be moving and grooving while sitting on this box, we're worried about the felt tearing. The number 8 position is held by Meinl Slaptop Cajon Box Drum. One last Meinl, we promise, but this one is definitely worth a look. Well, to start with, is the Slapbox really even a Cajon drum? The answer is yes and no. It starts out like a Cajon from the bottom, but the wide slappable top pops out and changes the game. This thing is like the tabletop that we all grew up practicing on, so it seems like a natural step from the Cajon. After all, with a Cajon drum, you have to slump over, which isn't all that comfortable. Here you squeeze the box between your knees and set the top to a nice slap-friendly angle. On other Cajons, you hit against the depth of the box, but here you're hitting against the height. This translates to a long wave. Deep sound that's very much like a djembe. In fact, the snare notes are also very pingy and djembe-like as well. On the other hand, the snare lacks the crack and sizzle of the other boxes we've seen so far. So overall, The sound of this box drum probably couldn't fool anyone into thinking it's a drum kit, but the sound is nice and different, and the Slaptop is much more comfortable to play for longer periods. Next at number 9, we have Groovewire Cajon, crossing continents to an American manufacturer. Let's take a look at how LP Cajon stack up. After all, the Cajon is originally from the Americas. The American Groovewire Cajon gets up there in price, comparable to the subwoofer and the 2-in-1, so let's compare the sound. Surprisingly, the bass on the American Groove sounds almost identical to the 2-in-1. They're both made of birch, however. The American Groove is a smaller, narrower box. There must be something else at play here, but we can't really see what that is. There's no real competition, though, between the American Groove and the subwoofer when it comes to bass. Both the richness of the tone and the volume of the subwoofer are simply in a class of their own. The snare sound is very different, though, as this is a wire Cajon. It has a snappier, more aggressive snare tone than the 2-in-1s or the subwoofer's snares. The snare sound here is really comparable to the Meinl Headliner. One other feature to point out is the nicely rounded shoulders on this box drum. That makes it a lot more comfortable to play, though it does take away from the sharp tappy tones that corners usually produce. Finally, the number 10 position is dominated by Sawtooth SDC-Joan 120B Cajon. Now to really put things to the test, the Sawtooth SDC-Joan 120B needs a better model name, is the cheapest Cajon drum we looked at, and it comes with a padded carrying case on top of that. Well, the carrying case with shoulder straps is great for lugging this box around, but where would you take it? Hopefully, not on stage. This Cajon simply doesn't measure up. Yes, it's made from birch like many other models, but the construction doesn't compare. The soundboard should be exactly flush with the body on all sides, but on the one we tried, there was some uncomfortable overlap. This also means your hands may hit the box rather than the face. Sound-wise, there's one word to describe it: flat. We should note that if you're just going to play around at home or with a small group of friends, the sound is adequate. The bass tone is really dull and dampened for reasons we can't quite work out. The snare tone, produced by an internal guitar-like string system, is prominent. There's a fair amount of attack, but on the downside, the snare tone bleeds heavily into the bass tone. This muddles the sounds and reduces clarity. Overall, it'll be fine, just don't like it. That's all for today. We upload music product review videos every single day, so don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for the upcoming video notification.